hearing on City Council Committee on Transportation. The purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony on Bill number 181063. I'm Councilman Kenyatta Johnson. I'm the chair of the Council's Committee on Transportation and Public Utilities. I recognize the presence of a quorum of committee members. Committee members in attendance are Councilwoman Sherelle Parker, Councilman David O., Councilman Mark Squilla. I want to also acknowledge Councilman Derek Green, and I would like for the clerk to please read the title of the bill.
Bill number 181063, an ordinance authorizing the Philadelphia Gas Works by Philadelphia Facilities Management Corporation, Philadelphia Municipal Authority, and the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the City of Philadelphia to enter into certain transactions and contracts regarding a liquefied natural gas project on property and facilities owned by the City of Philadelphia and operated by the Philadelphia Gas Works, including certain leases and license and contracts related to the purchase of natural gas, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before we start, the panel, I want to ask for the sponsor of the bill, who's also the chairperson of the Philadelphia Gas Commission, my colleague, Councilman Derek Green, to please offer his brief remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief. Thank you for this opportunity. This is not an easy decision that we're here to contemplate through this committee. The issue of climate change is something that's very real. I've been a strong proponent of environmental issues throughout my term in City Council and even prior to City Council. And so this decision to move on this issue and address this issue with this legislation is something that I thought about in quite a long time. As chair of the Gas Commission, I've seen PGW operate for a number of years, both in my role as chair and also as a staffer to the former chair, Councilman Marion Tasco. So I'm very familiar with PGW. I'm also very familiar with the issues of climate change and the environment. And unfortunately, there are a number of elected officials, not so much in this city, but in our nation's capital and in Harrisburg, that do not believe in climate change and do not believe that we need to make serious changes on our actions as a city and as a state and as humans in reference to impacting on climate change. And I appreciate all the conversations, discussions, debates I've had with numerous people, those who I've been friends with for a number of years, and those that do not support this proposal. And I will always have an open door policy to have those conversations and debates about this issue and other issues. But as an at-large member of council, I get out of City Hall as much as possible, and one of the things I see on a daily basis is the issue of poverty. And I see the struggles that people have every day with their ability just to pay for the basic necessities of life. One of those things being their utility bills. And as I think about this proposal and think about the ability to try to bring in some alternative revenue into PGW that can possibly help us to look at other concepts and not increase ratepayers' rates. Also, give us the ability to look at doing things in a creative way and moving forward to some of the things that some of the opponents to this bill would like to see in reference to sustainability and looking at trying to create alternative energy sources here in the city of Philadelphia, especially with the Philadelphia Gas Works. And that's why I also introduced the resolution to talk about the sustainability of PGW, because we are using less and less gas, both as constituents and others, because of the fact that our appliances are becoming more and more efficient. And so we need to find ways to transition this entity going forward. And so that's why I hope the advocates that are here and the opponents to this legislation will still be having a strong voice in reference to really pushing PGW towards a increasingly progressive future and looking at other ways that we can provide energy for the citizens in the city of Philadelphia. And so I look forward to having that conversation with the resolution regarding the sustainability of PGW. I look forward to the conversation today. I look forward to hearing the perspectives for those who both support this legislation and oppose this legislation, so we can have a fruitful debate and conversation regarding this proposal as well as PGW as it goes forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So before I start the panel, we have a considerable amount of individuals who would like to provide testimony, and we would like them to, but also where you can be concise and to the point, please do, but we still want this process to be thorough. As we go along, I will be putting on the clock to try to help manage this process, because it's very important, but at the end of the day, we want to get to the key points regarding this proposal, and that's for everybody for and against. And so I just want to state that for the record as we manage this particular hearing. And at this time, I'm going to ask for the clerk to please read the title.
181063, an ordinance authorizing the Philadelphia Gas Works by Philadelphia Facilities Management Corporation, Philadelphia Municipal Authority, and the Commissioner of Public Property on behalf of the City of Philadelphia to enter into certain transactions and contracts regarding a liquefied natural gas project or on project and facilities owned by the City of Philadelphia and operated by the Philadelphia Gas Works, including certain leases and licenses and contracts related to the purchase of natural gas, all under certain terms and conditions.
Can you please call the first panel?
Craig White, Melanie McCautry, and Matthew Taylor.
Please state your name for the record, and you can begin, Craig.
Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson and members of the committee. My name is Craig White. I'm President and CEO of the Philadelphia Gas Works. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today in support of Bill 181063 in order to share the details of PGW's new public-private partnership, which we are calling the Passyunk P3. I am joined at the table this morning by Melanie McCautry, PGW's Director of Public Affairs, and by Matthew Taylor, representing Liberty Energy Trust, the parent company of our project partner. I also have legal staff and technical staff with me to answer any questions you may have along those lines. Members of the committee, the Passyunk P3 is a project that checks all the boxes for PGW, for our customers, for our city, and for our region. In many ways, we could not have asked for a better project as our first venture into public-private partnerships. PGW stays focused on its core mission. We increase system reliability, we receive ongoing new revenue, we achieve environmental benefits, and we protect ratepayers from risk. Ensuring all of these items are included is why developing this P3 has taken some time, but we were confident that we could get it done, thanks in part to the insight that City Council itself has shared with PGW over the past 4 years or so. Council members challenged PGW to act on new revenue opportunities, to do more to support the local economy, and to step it up as part of the solution to the environmental questions we all wrestle with. And we heard you. The Passyunk P3 is proof that the ambition City Council has for PGW can be realized. And we're hoping this is the first of many. Council members asked us to find new revenue sources. This project does that. In my time at PGW, I have not seen another project that could add as much to our bottom line. We're talking about as much as $100 million in new revenue over the project's lifetime. Council members asked us to increase our efforts to ease the burden on residential customers. By reinvesting P3 revenues back into PGW, this project supports those who struggle to make ends meet and those who subsidize the programs that help. Combined with our focus on saving and cost cutting, the new revenue from the P3 will allow us to do more for our customers. Since 2010, we have achieved hundreds of millions of dollars in savings, tens of millions of dollars in cost reductions, and many millions more in avoided future costs. Into that mix, we can now add up to $4 million in new annual bottom line income. Although this is actually a modest project in terms of physical scale, occupying just 2% of the land at our Passyunk plant, about the size of a typical Dunkin' Donuts, it is huge in its positive impact. And not just for us, but for the almost 1.2 million Philly residents who depend on us for affordable warmth, and I stress affordable, cooking, hot water, and increasingly power. That's why we took such care assessing this P3 at every step in terms of its financial, operational, legal, and environmental impact. In the end, we are here today with a project where there is no financial risk to ratepayers, for which we accrue zero upfront costs, that reimburses us for our operating costs, and that generates millions in new revenues. And it takes advantage of a core competency, a core expertise at PGW. We have stored LNG at Passyunk and at our facility in Port Richmond for 5 decades, and have saved our customers almost $4 billion in that time. Just last winter, Philadelphia had more high demand, cold weather days than during any other winter over the last decade. For most utilities, that meant a scramble to buy more natural gas and a spike in prices as the demand for natural gas surged. Thanks to PGW's LNG, Philadelphia avoided the worst of this surge pricing. 26% of the increased natural gas demand during those coldest days was met using our LNG facilities, saving ratepayers millions of dollars. The Passyunk P3 will allow us to add making money with LNG to this ongoing work of saving money with LNG. So financially and operationally, it makes sense. What about the legal framework? PGW's in-house counsel, as well as the law department, city law department, and specially outside counsel, worked very hard to make sure that the robust legal safeguards needed for PGW and the city are in place. The end result of all that hard work has been submitted to the committee as part of the PGW testimony and describes some of the exhaustive legal framework which protects ratepayers and protects the city. Of course, we also considered the environmental implications of this project. When we really examine the environmental challenge we face, we find that, along with renewables, natural gas is part of the solution, not the problem. Natural gas makes up the lion's share of the reductions we have seen in harmful emissions over the last 10 years. Every power plant that uses natural gas instead of coal produces half the carbon dioxide, less than a third of the nitrogen oxides, and approximately 1% of the sulfur oxides at the power plant. And thanks to the availability of cheap domestic natural gas, power plants that use coal are being retired at a faster rate than ever before. More locally, PGW's Combined Heat and Power, or CHP, initiatives also lead the way in creating energy more efficiently. There are 20 CHP installations in Philadelphia using natural gas to produce power at double the efficiency rate of our region's power plants. Said another way, a CHP unit only requires half of the volume of natural gas to produce the same amount of energy. Philly's eds and meds economy, in particular, has embraced the freedom from our vulnerable electric grid that an on-site CHP unit offers. When the power goes out, Cancer Treatment Centers of America, for example, cannot simply press pause on its life-saving work, and it doesn't want to rely on dirty diesel backup generators to make it through. That's why we are proud to unveil a new natural gas CHP unit there in 2018. At PGW, we're committed as anyone to improving the environment we share and which our children will inherit. Natural gas is clean, abundant, cost-effective, and available. And the equipment that uses it is more efficient than ever. It is already displacing dirtier fuels at scale. And you're going to hear that word in my testimony a couple of times, because at scale is the critical point. And it does so at a cost that won't disenfranchise the most vulnerable or increase the number of people struggling with energy insecurity. It is true that methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. If it escapes before it can be turned into energy, it's a problem. But consider this: methane accounts for no more than 10% of our country's annual greenhouse gases. Of that small but potent contribution, 36% comes from agricultural sources, landfills account for another 15%, and coal mining adds a further 8%. Meanwhile, residential natural gas consumption nationwide contributes less than 4% of our nation's annual greenhouse gas emissions, even though 19 million more people rely on natural gas today than in 1990. The question we ask ourselves is, what can we do right now to reduce harmful human-caused emissions by the necessary amounts? The answer is a lot. But all of the noise about this issue makes it hard to recognize the workable solutions right in front of us. Nevertheless, between extreme perspectives, practical positive contributions are being made, again, at scale. That's the reality of natural gas, and it's the context in which we are presenting the Passyunk P3 project today. We also wanted to find out what the environmental impact of the new facility itself would be. So we brought in Lanyon Engineering and Environmental Services Incorporated. Their report, included as part of PGW's submitted testimony and available in full at pgworks.com, confirms that the impact of the new LNG facility will be minimal. So what does that mean? What's minimal? The total carbon footprint of this new LNG facility, assuming it runs at full capacity, is the same as the output of 50 new homes in Philadelphia. And last year, more than 2,800 new homes were built in Center City alone. At the same time, the revenue from this project is like adding close to 6,000 new homes to PGW's customer base. And nothing about this P3 limits our potential for diversification into renewables and other areas, even as it helps to sustain families supporting jobs right here in Philadelphia, including the 1,600 men and women who work for PGW and who call Philadelphia home. For those reasons and others to be detailed in the testimony to follow, PGW respectfully asks that the Transportation and Public Utilities Committee give a favorable recommendation to this proposal for final approval by City Council and suspend the rules so that the bill may pass upon second reading. We have taken a careful and considered approach to this project, in part because it is a new venture, but also because we work for Philadelphia, and Philly is where we live. It's where our kids grow up, it's where we learn, it's where we shop and dine, and it's where the teams we live and die for play. We see what's going on around us, and we're out to make a positive difference. We don't deny the reality of changing weather patterns. We're not anti-environment or pro-dirty air. Quite the opposite. That's why we're so excited to continue working with the Office of Sustainability and others, keeping our focus on the future and keeping the pressure on so we can continue to improve the environment we all share. 4 years ago, City Council recognized that change was needed if PGW was to reach its potential. I'm here today with a direct, tangible outcome of that directive. The Passyunk P3 project says that Philadelphia is a city that you can do business with. It's a city concerned about the welfare of its residents and of its commercial community, and it's a city focused on the environment. PGW requests that Bill 181063 be voted upon favorably by the committee for approval by City Council. Now, I'm joined here also with Melanie McCotry, but for the sake of brevity, Melanie has submitted written testimony, and we're both here to answer your questions.
Thank you very much.
Matt Taylor from Liberty Energy Trust. As well as Melanie, I have submitted written testimony and am happy to help answer questions as well.
Thank you. Councilman Squilla.
Thank you for your testimony, and I really appreciate the conversations over the last week. Melanie has been great with communicating with me. Apologize if you emailed me late last night. For some reason, my phone died and my email, I couldn't get email till this morning around 10:15, so I've been trying to catch up. But everything's back on now. But I know, Melanie, we had asked a couple questions. We had met with some groups, and some of the concerns that we're having about emissions and the carbon footprint on the site and how to reduce the carbon footprint. You had said that PGW was supportive of using revenues generated to come up with a reduction of the carbon footprint within that area and some planned use of how PGW will now be considered as a city-owned facility how they would be reducing the carbon footprint moving forward. Can you clarify that for us?
Yes.
Certainly, Councilman. As you know, the primary focus of PGW is safety, reliability, and customer service. And in that vein, our biggest expense is our cast iron main replacement program. That cast iron main replacement program not only increases safety, but it reduces the escape of methane. So that being said, the dollars that we're talking about with this P3 project will go back into the PGW sources of revenue to not only meet those items, but also allow us to venture into new opportunities. You're going to see an RFP come out from PGW very soon that will invite parties to bring rather unique opportunities to possibly produce renewable natural gas, syngas, and generate electricity, a number of different opportunities. So the way I would describe it is, we're certainly aware of the fact that we, as a company and as an industry, need to work towards the direction that our customers and the world at large wants to move, and we're going to certainly do that.
On the site, and maybe we know that if this LNG plant moves forward, emissions from our conversations from the site would be approximately 50 homes, emissions of 50 homes. But knowing that we're increasing emissions, is there a plan to then use this revenue, like you stated? How would that be on that site to address the emissions, to lower the emissions moving forward?
Well, I mean, if you're producing renewable natural gas, there may be emissions involved in that. You have to compress. You've got to do a lot of things. So I think you're referring to one facet of it. And certainly, if you know the history of PGW, we were the second largest polluter in the city. We're not even on the radar screen anymore because we've eliminated we had 5 engines that were probably a third the size of this room, each engine, up at our Richmond plant. We now have a facility that's a turbine. It runs off the pressure coming in from the interstate pipeline. The liquefier that we're building down at Passyunk uses electric compression. The only item in that entire facility that has any combustion is a small compressor as part of the process. It's called a heater, actually. So I can't say that there's an immediate concomitant reduction of the equivalent of 50 homes. But as a company, I mean, we're looking at a lot of different things. We're looking at solar. We're looking at various projects that I don't want to discuss until we put the RFP out. But we're looking at a variety of projects that may enable us to produce energy in a much more efficient and cleaner way. The one thing I will point out is the big problem with these projects is there's no scale to them and they're expensive. So we have to be willing to expect that costs will go up in order to do a lot of these. We're trying to do things at PGW that recognize that 250,000 of our 500,000 customers are at 250% of poverty or less. 150,000 of our customers are at the poverty line or below. So we have to do things, and we have to do it in an efficient and cost-effective manner.
And just to add to that, Councilman, we do have plans that's in our FY20 budget that we're looking to explore solar power at our Passyunk facility. So that is part of our plan. It's in our budget for FY20.
And would it be supportive of codifying that in language to have that as part of this plan moving forward, is to continue that reduction of the carbon footprint?
Councilman, with all due respect, we have to go through the Philadelphia Gas Commission to get approval. And quite frankly, cost is a big item. So we will endeavor to look for projects that meet the cost requirements and at the same time meet environmental requirements. I think we've added some language to one of the whereas clauses that may address that.
Thank you. And there is an amendment that's passed around that we could add, and I think Councilman Green is going to speak on that. If we, sometimes people, and we're looking at how do we help the people in our community that are underserved. We have a lot of concerns, and as council people, you try to weigh all these options, right? How do we help people? You know, what in turn does that negative impact be? How do we mitigate that negative impact in doing that? So none of these decisions are as easy as people think. You know, you have people on both sides of every issue. And when we try to listen to all the sides, and you know, we think that, you know, as a council member, you want to get all that information to make an educated decision moving forward. We do want to make sure that we ask the questions that our constituents are asking us. And so, you know, it helps educate us, it helps educate you guys, and it also helps educate the public as we move forward through these hearings. And to see, I think if people did see a commitment, you know, as Philadelphia, we would love to own a utility that becomes the first green, renewable utility in the country. And I think that's really important to know, and to know that people are saying, all right, well, you're taking one step back, but you're doing 2 steps forward, because this revenue will then allow us to move forward and reduce our carbon footprint. Then people may not like it, but they say, you know what, I see a positive move. And I think that's where we want to get to. We want to get to where we see positive changes in, you know, the city of Philadelphia, getting to a point where we see that moving forward. And I know willingness to work, and your communications has been great, and I want to thank Melody, not only in this case, but for all your community outreach that you go when we have issues and community concerns out in the neighborhoods. You have been unbelievably responsive, which is great for PGW, and I advocate for maybe an increase in pay or something later. But to be able to do that and be willing to now amend some of this legislation to add some of those commitments, I think is very important. So I have some other questions, but I'll let my colleagues ask before you move forward. Thanks.
Councilwoman Sherelle Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by saying a huge thank you to the sponsor of this bill, Councilman Green. Thank you for your very thoughtful but succinct opening when you acknowledge the need for us to be extremely concerned about the environmental issues that many of the people who are present in this room are concerned about, but striking a very delicate balance, particularly when it comes to the ratepayers here in the city of Philadelphia, who I just want to note for the record, who have done more than their fair share over the years to contribute to PGW functioning as efficiently as it possibly could. So I wanted to say thank you for that. My question is to you, Craig White. You mentioned during your testimony, but I don't know that people really understood when you mentioned cast iron main replacement. And this strikes a chord inside of me, because I was a very, very strong advocate for PGW's advanced replacement of its cast iron pipe. And when we start thinking about safety here in the city of Philadelphia, that is of huge concern with our aging infrastructure. So I want you to tell me how, if possible, that any of this revenue could assist in increasing the amount of replacement.
All of the revenue that we generate, it's a closed loop. There's no shareholders, there's no stockholders, there's no one else that receives the money except for our ratepayers and the $18 million that goes to the city. So every program that we have will benefit from this $4 million, including the cast iron main, including environmental, including improvements in customer service. We're about to do a replacement of our customer information system. So we have a lot going on at PGW, and incremental revenues are hard to come by. Our largest customer, just to be clear on that point, produced $1 million a year. This one's $4 million. Other than that, we are about 85% of our revenues come from residential customers.
Tell me, how much cast iron pipe does PGW have? Like
about 1,300 miles.
About 1,300 miles. And how much would you say in recent years have we replaced?
We're replacing 33 miles this year. We've done as much as 35. For many years, we had a industry standard program of 1%, which we set at 18, and we kept it there as the number of miles went below 1,800. We still kept it at 18. My expectation is that we will file again with the PUC to expand the number of miles. Those miles would be larger right now, but we are doing a lot of large diameter pipe. Large diameter pipe can be 4 times the cost of small diameter. So you don't get as many miles when you're doing the large diameter, but of course, you're addressing a significant issue.
So 33 miles, and based on the schedule, I know you said in the future you'll go to the PUC and you hope to increase that amount, but based on the 33 miles, how long will it take PGW to get through that process?
We will eliminate the large diameter. The 33 miles will go up. So our estimate right now is about 44 years. However, the industry seems to be moving in the neighborhood of about 25 years. We're realists. We know where we have to be. So my expectation is we're going to move in that direction. But there's no other pockets for us to reach into to pay for this other than our customers. So we have to make it affordable, and at the same time, we've got to make sure we prudently replace what we believe to be the most important main to replace.
I know in 2016, I had just left the Pennsylvania General Assembly, and in 2016, I know that the PUC had approved your overall long-term infrastructure improvement plan, in which you outlined an additional $11 million in pipeline replacement spending per year. And although I was then a member of City Council, I want you to know I paid very close attention to that and will continue to do so, because I now represent the community that, as a result of a gas explosion in the 1980s, realized that a community was built on ash and cinder, its infrastructure, and we had over 1,000 families in that community that had to be relocated. And, you know, kudos to my predecessor, Councilwoman Marion Tasco, who did such an outstanding job with that. But I will tell you that the public safety of that cast iron pipe, if people think the city of Philadelphia's infrastructure is antiquated and outdated, if they think our school district has a $5 billion price tag on it to replace our school buildings, if you think our housing stock, much of which was built before the 1950s, is aging, outdated and antiquated, replacing that cast iron pipe, you need to get there before 44 years. I mean, and that's relative to the public safety here in our city. So we'll be watching this and hope that you can find additional ways to come up with creative revenue generating strategies that don't always end up on the backs of Philadelphia's most vulnerable residents who are helping to keep PGW alive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question that was asked is from one of my colleagues is, what's the total profit and revenue that PGW would receive off of this particular?
$4 million a year. At full capacity, $4 million, and we believe that it will be at full capacity. There's quite a demand for the product.
Okay, 1 second.
So that's bottom line. That's after all expenses. That goes right. And PGW's bottom line revenue has fluctuated somewhere around between 10 and 35 million a year. So when you're talking about 4 million, you're looking at a fairly substantial increase in our bottom line revenue.
Talk about the additional revenue and its impact on our LIHEAP program or support for, you know, the average residential customer, poverty wages. How does this benefit them overall in terms of your overall operations? I know you talked about customer service, you talked about infrastructure. Talk about helping those most vulnerable when it comes to customers living in poverty.
Sure. You know, directly to Craig's point earlier, that all the revenue, because we don't have investors, it's all going back to our ratepayers. And that additional revenue, you know, we talk a lot about our customers that are below the poverty line, but there are many customers who are right on the edge of poverty. And so if we are doing things to help to keep our rates down, they will benefit the most from this sort of opportunity, and keeping them out of having to then, you know, even enroll in some of our programs, which they are available available and we want everyone to take advantage of. But really our goal is to make sure that the energy costs for all of our customers, all 500,000 of them, stay affordable.
So just to get to the point, basically keeping rates down. Okay. Councilman Derek Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the panel for being here and providing testimony. Want to push back a little bit on some comments that were made. Craig, you stated that PGW is looking at doing types of alternative concepts going forward. Do you have a specific plan on diversification of the business model for PGW?
No, once we put the RFP out and we see what's out there, we've been doing some investigation, we've talked to some people, but we're going to see what comes back and we're going to see what's plausible before we try to present that to our board of directors. And if there's a capital budget or operating budget requirement, you'll see it in the filings with the Philadelphia Gas Commission.
So make sure I understand, you're going to issue an RFP for models on future business diversification at PGW? No.
We're going to issue an RFP that looks for entities that can produce energy in a manner that is clean. I mean, it's a very detailed RFP. I'd be happy to share it with you.
Okay, but what about the concept of trying to diversify the future of the entity?
I think there's people beyond the walls of PGW that are thinking along those lines, and PGW is thinking along those lines. Obviously, I'm a big advocate of CHP, where natural gas is used to produce electricity. The waste heat is then used. The efficiency rate's at 85%. A central generating plant is lucky to be at 40%. So I'm a big advocate of using energy much more efficiently. Quite frankly, we believe that there may be opportunities for renewable types of technologies that could fit in our system and still be done at a cost that would be acceptable to the customer. But, you know, this is something that we will have to decide not just at PGW, but also through our board, the Gas Commission, and City Council.
When do you anticipate issuing that RFP?
I don't have a date for you, but we've been working on it for about 6 months, so it should be relatively soon.
Okay. And is the goal for that RFP, is there a timeline perspective for when you hope to get that information back from that RFP? We haven't set the timeline yet for that, Councilman, but you know, we're working that in tandem with completion of this project. We're looking at potentially utilizing some more of our underutilized capability and turning it into a revenue generator. So we're looking at that project. We're also looking at these renewable projects. Okay. I mean, the reason I'm asking these questions because although I do support this proposal, I'm also concerned that, you know, as an entity, PGW is not going to be as aggressive as it can be in reference to diversification. And so that's something I'm going to continue to push on a regular basis, not just in my role in City Council, but also in the Gas Commission, because I think the fear and concern that people have is that this idea of looking at and changing the model of PGW will continue to be pushed off and pushed off and pushed off in the future, and just study without actually putting together a real plan. And so that's why when after a lot of deliberation, decided to support this bill, I also put together that other resolution to talk about the future sustainability of PGW, because as I'm concerned about issues of poverty and concerned about bringing other revenue into PGW, I'm also concerned that we have to take steps every day. We've got to be able to chew gum and walk at the same time, and we've got to take steps every day to also look about how we're going to change the business model, because we cannot ignore the impact of climate change and the steps we've got to take every day.
We're doing some extensive strategic planning on what changes we need to make at PGW that include just the way we're structured right now. And things that we may want to look at in the future would include a recognition of the fact that we're trying to improve the environment. But let me also point out that you may be aware of the fact that sustainability received the Bloomberg grant. And one of the reasons they received that is because we are a municipal utility owned by the city of Philadelphia. So there's going to be an extensive look, as I understand it, in that Bloomberg grant research. So that's another place that I think your issues or the issues you raise are going to be looked at.
Right. I mean, to me, this is another reason why it was smart of this body not to sell PGW, because if this was now owned by a private entity, we would not even be able to have this conversation. Because if it was, you name the private entity, they would be deciding what they want to do, and their for-profit board of directors would be deciding on profit maximization and not sustainability. But I want to see, as we move forward with both the PGW budget, as we go through the operating capital budget, want to see dollars allocated to how we move forward on this issue in a real way and not just talk.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions from members of the panel? All right, just stick around throughout the rest of the hearing in case we have some additional questions and things you may need to clarify. Would the clerk please call the next panel?
Christopher Pahalski, Dominic Casimir, Jamela McClendon, and Emily Shapira.
Please state your name for the record and begin. Just for the record, if you would like to summarize, feel free. If you would like to just submit testimony, feel free. If you would like to just focus on your key points, feel free. And you can begin your testimony. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman, or good afternoon now. Chairman Johnson and members of the committee, I'm Chris Pahalski, Director of Strategic Initiatives and Policy for the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on Bill 181063, and I will try to summarize or skip parts. As many of you know, Mayor Kenny has committed Philadelphia to meeting the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, which means we are working to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050 and moving towards 100% renewable energy. Meeting these goals requires all local stakeholders, the city, residents, businesses, and our utilities to use less energy and clean energy. We believe this project will help contribute to these goals, particularly during the next crucial decade when emissions must be cut dramatically before we face irreversible damage. Currently, 25% of Philadelphia's installed electrical capacity is oil-fired. The use of oil for heating contributes to air quality issues, including ozone. The issue is particularly problematic during cold snaps when oil is used as a backup. LNG can be used to replace dirty diesel in transportation, for which no current cleaner fuel is currently available. This project can help address these issues by using LNG as a backup source during peak times rather than oil. If used this way, it is known that this project would reduce particulate matter, nitrous oxides, and sulfur dioxides, and is also projected to reduce carbon emissions. Because the LNG facility will run on its processes through electricity, the local emissions will be only that equivalent to a few homes being built. The city will ensure that PGW and their project partner meet all permit requirements. While the administration ultimately aspires to an even cleaner alternative, which we anticipate will become available during the 20-year lifespan of this project, we understand that LNG is currently the best option we have today. We also feel that the contractual agreement developed for this project will provide options for the city when a viable, cleaner product becomes available on the market. This is why the city and PGW partnered on a proposal to the Bloomberg American Cities Climate Challenge to focus on scaling up climate action by 2020. As one of the selected cities, the city and PGW will be embarking on a business diversification study that will analyze the various options for PGW to go beyond their current use of natural gas and investigate the opportunity for PGW in renewable energy and energy conservations. We look forward to sharing the outcomes of this study with City Council. Due to the emissions reductions associated with this project, the administration supports Bill number 181063.
Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson and members of the committee. My name is Jamela McClendon, and I am the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Gas Commission. On behalf of the Commission, I appreciate this opportunity to testify in support of Bill number 181063, as well as to provide some background information on the Commission's deliberation process in reaching its decision to recommend approval of PGW's proposed LNG project to City Council. I have filed written testimony, so I am going to keep this as short as possible. On September 20th, 2018, PGW and PFMC filed their petition with the Gas Commission, which began our deliberation process in this matter. Over the course of October 24th and October 25th, both PGW and the Public Advocate filed written testimony on the matter, and on October 29th, 2018, a public hearing was held before the Gas Commission's hearing examiners, where both PGW and the Advocate's witnesses were able to provide testimony consistent with their written statements and were questioned accordingly. Members of the public were also invited to provide sworn testimony and commentary for consideration by the hearing examiners and ultimately by the Gas Commissioners. Additionally, members of the public were provided with the opportunity to submit additional comments in writing to the Commission at the conclusion of the hearing. All of the materials that ultimately comprise the public record in this matter, including the various statements and briefs submitted by PGW and the Public Advocate, the public hearing transcript itself, were posted on the Commission's website so that members of the public could review the same materials being reviewed by the Commission. Based upon the review of the record, the Commission's hearing examiners issued a recommended decision to the Commissioners, and prior to their deliberations, copies of all of the documents that comprise the record, as well as the approximately 50 comments received from members of the public, were provided to the Commissioners for their review. After duly considering all testimony, the Commission voted 4-1 in favor of making a recommendation to City Council in favor of PGW's proposed project at the Commission's special meeting held on December 4th, 2018. In reaching its decision, the Commission felt that the record developed during the proceedings supported the approval of the project. Also, the generation of $1.8 million to $4 million of additional revenue each year represents a significant amount of needed revenue to PGW and aids in insulating PGW's ratepayers, many of whom fall below the federal poverty guidelines, from future rate increases. It should be noted that the concerns expressed by some members of the public regarding the environmental impact of the project were seriously considered and weighed by the Commission. Based upon the environmental reports prepared for this project and included in the record, it appears that the environmental impacts from the project would be minimal. However, this does not mean that there are no additional conversations to be had regarding PGW and its environmental impacts. As was noted by Councilman Green, Chair of the Commission, during the meeting on December 4th, we as a city must begin to have a serious discussion about the future of PGW in light of the seriousness of climate change facing the world. To that end, the Commission and its staff stands ready to participate in the hearings proposed by Councilman Green's resolution to discuss the sustainability of PGW. This concludes my remarks. I thank you for your time and attention, and will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. Please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, members of the committee. My name is Emily Shapira. I'm the Executive Director of the Philadelphia Energy Authority. The Energy Authority was created in 2010 to support the city on issues of energy affordability and sustainability. Among other things, we hold long-term contracts on behalf of the city related to energy, although we are not typically engaged for PGW projects. I'm here today to testify regarding Bill 181063. My board has not had the opportunity to formally vote on a position on this bill, so I'm here today not to express a position, but to provide some facts and suggestions for your consideration. When PGW's proposal for this public-private partnership was before the Gas Commission, Councilman Green asked the Energy Authority to take a look at the details of the project and provide some additional assessment. I've met with Langen Environmental Engineers, the firm hired to complete PGW's environmental review, which I'll note was issued finally on November 26, 2018, just a few days before the final vote of the Gas Commission. We met with them to better understand their analysis and review the market assumptions provided by Liberty Energy Trust. We've found both to be reasonable and expect this project to provide immediate and likely local emissions reductions. This committee might hear that there's a choice to be made today between providing funds that forestall rate increases for low-income Philadelphians and broader environmental concerns. This is a false dichotomy because these issues are deeply intertwined, and this project is likely to have positive effects on both. Low-income populations disproportionately bear the brunt of the effects of climate change and local air pollution. In Philadelphia, average temperature from one neighborhood to the next can vary by as much as 22 degrees on the same day, with hotter than average blocks closely tracking impoverished census tracts. In Philadelphia, power plants, including this one and the refinery, are located in low-income communities, and our city is a non-attainment zone for air quality. There are two key reasons to reframe this discussion. First, the funds guaranteed to PGW under this agreement, which are listed in the documents on Legistar for City Council, is $1.35 million as a minimum, are not likely to have a substantive impact on rate increases in the future. And if that is our objective, then investing in housing preservation to reduce the energy consumption of low-income households would have a dramatically greater impact on the base rate in Philadelphia over time. We would encourage PGW and Council to further examine that opportunity. Second, PGW's proposal is likely in our findings to reduce emissions both locally and globally. We found the assumptions in Langen's environmental review to be reasonable, which shows the reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, as Chris mentioned, is likely to be about 30% and other pollutants as much as 90%, because it shows the most likely use of the LNG will be for peak shaving and diesel fuel replacement. We also found those assumptions credible. As Chris mentioned, during extreme winter weather events like a polar vortex, power plants and big energy users, including, and I want to mention in particular, Veolia here locally in the city, use diesel or fuel oil to supplement their power needs. The local and global pollution from these incidents can be incredibly harmful to our local air quality and to global climate change. LNG is currently the only viable replacement for peak shaving or replacing these dirty, harmful fuels during peak usage periods. Renewables and current battery storage technology do not currently meet this particular need, though they may in the next decade. To my understanding, there will be no international export of LNG as part of this project. If that were the case, we would not see the same emissions reductions or local air quality impacts. We also understand that this project provides infrastructure that would allow for the incorporation of renewable natural gas in the future as soon as it's economically viable and available, though that's not currently part of PGW's proposal. This should mitigate some concerns about building new fossil fuel infrastructure. Over the next 5 to 10 years, LNG could be an important source of emissions reduction, but if we are to meet the city's goal of 80% carbon reduction by 2050 and the urgent demands of climate change, we'll need to go much further. It would be prudent of Council to require additional reporting and oversight on the pollution reduction and local impacts of this project, such as 1, an annual source and use report specifying the life cycle plant emissions, including the input fuel source and the end-use fuel replacement, and 2, a biennial report on the state of the market with respect to renewable natural gas. This will also ensure that as it becomes economically viable to transition to cleaner fuel sources, this facility does so. Finally, I've been present at a number of different presentations from both PGW and Liberty Energy Trust about this project, and the future possibilities for research and innovation are strong. They have not yet committed to any of this in writing, but I commend their thoughtful approach and would be excited to hear more about their ideas for carbon sequestration, alternative fuels, and solar on that specific site. The Energy Authority remains available to provide additional analysis as needed to members of the committee and the council as a whole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Councilman Derek Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like if Craig White or someone from BGW could come to the panel to follow up on the points raised by Ms. Shapiro. Thank you, Mr. White. Ms. Shapiro raised a couple of, about 3 different reporting items regarding this project, and I think I had them, but I'll just restate them. An annual source and use report that specifies the input fuel source, the end use of the LNG, and the resulting life cycle emissions, a bi- or triennial report on the feasibility of other input fuels like biogas, and publish available research and learning associated with the purification or liquefaction process shareable to understand implications for renewable gas or other use. Based on just hearing that, I know you're just hearing that probably for the first time, are those reporting things that we possibly could get from PGW associated with this project?
I'm sure reporting on details of the project won't be a problem in that we capture, a great deal of detail. But I have to give some thought to, especially the last point you made as far as the benefits of what we're going to get out of this reporting. But certainly, we're never short of statistics.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to put that on the record as we're having today's hearing. And if there's future hearings, hopefully we can have the opportunity for PGW to evaluate that in more detail and make a decision going forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next panel?
Tremaine Matlock Turner, Pat Eating, Michael McDonough, and Benjamin Parvey.
So as we get started, as always, it's a good opportunity to see you, my friend Pat Eating, and thank you for your advocacy for workers who are keeping our city moving forward in all different areas of society. I know you are in support of, and so feel free if you would like to summarize, talk about your key points in support of this legislation, as well as Michael McDonough, Vice President of the Gas Workers Union Local 686. Thank you also for stepping up to the plate and making sure that we didn't privatize PGW several years ago, and this is a classic example of why institutions such as PGW should remain under the jurisdiction of the city of Philadelphia. Keith, always good to see you, and thank you and your team for your advocacy. But feel free to also summarize and talk about your support as well, and also call her auntie because she's always been supportive of my efforts in the family. Always good to see you, Charmaine Matlock Turner, and thank you as well for being here. And again, feel free in terms of your testimony, if you would like, summarize, touch on your key points, because we have a very long, lengthy session ahead of us. Thank you very much, and you can begin your testimony.
Thank you, and I will be brief no matter how long it takes. Good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, and also the committee. It would be great if we were here together just to try to entice Bryce Harper to come to the Phillies, but we're here for more important stuff. So I will tell you that I'm here, and I wanted to make this testimony a little bit more than just the written testimony, because we're invested in this project. We're not just talking about the project. So having said that, the Philadelphia Labor is in support of PGW's project, Passyunk project. The benefit of this project is hard to define. Not only will we benefit from all the construction jobs in the near term, but we will secure generations of good paying union jobs with the Philadelphia Gas Works. PGW has been on the leading edge of clean energy technology for years, and this LNG is truly a next generation fuel. Not so long ago, there was a lot of discussion about positioning Philadelphia to be an energy hub like the city of Houston is in the Gulf Coast. By supporting this Passyunk project, you are leading the way for American energy independence and good jobs for Philadelphians. I'm proud to say that the project investor for the Passyunk project is Ullico Infrastructure Fund, which is a 100% union fund that makes investments in infrastructure business that provide essential services in the United States. For 85 years, Ullico has been the only labor-owned insurance and investment company. Ullico's investments platform currently has $3.6 billion of assets under management, primarily from local union pension funds. The AFL-CIO and our affiliate unions are engaged in a major effort in responsible energy and infrastructure improvements across the nation, and a total commitment of $10 billion in equity. The great benefit of this public-private partnership is the city is able to utilize our great asset in the gas works without losing ownership. None of this would be possible without the council's commitment to Philadelphia owning its own utility. The Philadelphia labor movement stands in solidarity with you in that commitment. It is my belief and desire that projects like this will continue to entice new businesses to come to this great city of brotherly love and sisterly affection by creating good family-sustaining jobs. I'm asking this committee and the council as a whole to move this project forward, and thank you very much for the time allotted.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You can begin.
Mr. Chairman and council members, thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today to discuss the future of energy and our support for the Passyunk P3 LNG project. My name is Benjamin Parvey, and I am the CEO of Blue Sky Power. Blue Sky Power is the energy company of the future. We develop, finance, and operate clean energy infrastructure such as solar, cogeneration, microgrids, and energy storage for institutions, governments, and commercial and industrial facilities in the Delaware Valley and across the nation. We have developed and brought to life over $150 million of solar power projects and clean energy microgrids over the last 10 years. We have helped our customers dramatically reduce their greenhouse gas emissions from their buildings and operations. In the city of Philadelphia, we have done a couple of clean energy infrastructure projects that have received state and national recognition and awards for their environmental benefits and emissions reductions. Together, over the life of these projects, they will offset almost 200,000 barrels of oil that would have been consumed. And the energy saved from these projects equals the amount of carbon sequestered by 90,000 acres of forests in 1 year. These projects are fueled by low emissions, clean powered natural gas. If these clean energy infrastructure projects were not completed in the city of Philadelphia, these facilities would still be powered by inefficient, centralized power plants fueled by coal, oil, and nuclear power. It is Blue Sky Power's driving purpose to improve the quality of life for our customers and their communities, and to empower them to take control of their energy future. To improve the quality of life for seniors living at these two facilities in Philadelphia, we have made their communities more resilient and more sustainable, thanks in large part to clean energy powered by natural gas. The future of energy is now, and it is a tremendously exciting time to bring clean, affordable, and resilient energy to schools, senior living communities, and industries in Philadelphia. We are now combining solar, battery storage, and clean power generation into microgrids. We as a society are now breathing new life into our power. We now generate power from the sun, wind, and abundant clean energy resources, and are now able to store that power for later use. We can reduce our impact on our planet now, so our children may breathe clean air and have abundant power to fuel their expansive dreams. The technology that links these clean power sources and allows electrons to flow is advancing at an exciting pace. The new clean energy workforce of today is trained in apps and online analytics. They can transfer power with the swipe of a finger, not the turn of a rusty 100-year-old crank. Our children will control their power with their fingertips and their voices. Our power will empower us to realize expansive and sustainable growth and achieve abundant dreams. Our power will be local and logical. Our power will be intertwined with the technology, automation, and innovation in our homes, our institutions, and our industries. Our power will be clean and abundant. The vision for our clean energy future can be realized now. We have strong sustainability goals in the city of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. In order to hit these sustainability goals, it is imperative that we rapidly advance deployment of solar, microgrids, energy storage, and clean natural gas. LNG is a critical component for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. If we're not using LNG or natural gas, we're forced to use coal, oil, and nuclear power. We have abundant, cheap natural gas, which when combined with renewables, will help us more quickly achieve our clean energy vision and hit our carbon reduction goals. The sun does not always shine, the wind does not always blow, but combining these renewable resources with battery storage and clean natural gas will allow us to realize our substantial sustainability goals sooner. The diversified and technologically advanced energy mix is the solution for a sustainable future. The Passyunk P3 project is a productive path forward for our region and a proper complement to our clean energy progress. It It is time to retire the tired, failing, and archaic relics of an industrial era long since past and energize clean natural gas, renewables, and microgrids to power our lives, our communities, and the industries of tomorrow. The future of energy is now, and to realize the future of energy, we support the Passyunk P3 LNG project. Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to discuss the future of energy in Philadelphia. I request that bill number 181063 be voted upon favorably by the committee for approval of council.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. I'm sorry. My name is Charmaine Matlock-Turner. I'm the president and CEO of the Urban Affairs Coalition in Philadelphia. And good afternoon, Chairman Johnson, Councilwoman Parker, and Councilman Green, and members of the Transportation and Public Utilities Committee. As I said before, my name is Charmaine Matlock-Turner, and I'm here representing the Urban Affairs Coalition. We are pleased to provide testimony today and support for PGW's proposed P3 LNG project at the Passyunk plant. As UAC approaches its 50th anniversary, the coalition has united government, business, labor, neighborhoods, and individual initiative to improve the quality of life in the region, to build wealth in urban communities, and to help solve emerging issues. UAC has more than 30 years experience in economic opportunity planning, including project monitoring and data mining analysis and reporting. UAC's Economic Development Projects Department is an honest broker and acts as a consultant with nonprofit, for-profit, and government entities to influence wealth building by promoting employment and business development for minorities, women, and community residents. EDP has managed $9.7 billion in projects, and this experience has helped project owners produce more than $2.9 billion in contract awards to minority-owned, women-owned, and disabled-owned businesses, and more than $774 million in wages paid to minority and female employees as a result of economic opportunity plans. Recent examples of UAC EDP's work include the Comcast Centers, Fashion District of Philadelphia, and the rebuilt Parkside soccer field. It is anticipated that this project will result in a $20 million spend in local construction, professional services, and related businesses. PGW and Liberty Energy Trust have made efforts to ensure this project will support the expansion of economic opportunity, including a target of 35 to 45% spend in diverse businesses to deliver to diverse businesses as a part of this project. In conclusion, the Urban Affairs Coalition believes that this project can improve the economic opportunity and diversity for local businesses as well as workers. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions about our work around economic opportunity.
Thank you very much. Mike? Thank you also, Mike, you and your team, for being here every Thursday morning, advocating to make sure we didn't privatize PGW, and thank you for staying on the case. You can start your testimony.
Thanks for not selling us, Councilman. Councilman Green, Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Parker, on behalf of Keith Holmes and the Executive Board of Local 686, I'd like to read our statement. UWUA Local 686 appreciates the opportunity to submit this testimony to the committee. Local 686 represents over 1,130 employees of PGW, and on behalf of these employees, we are asking that this committee and City Council support this project. There are 3 questions the union asked when new projects or new initiatives are suggested at PGW. First, will the project generate substantial revenue to PGW? In this instance, whether the revenue is $4 million a year as projected, or a little less during a warm winter, or more during colder years, the number represents a significant infusion of cash, which is important to the company and to the union membership. As you are aware, the enhanced revenue will help fund our future collective bargaining agreements and ensure continued job security for our members. Should revenue opportunities such as this be rejected, we fear mass departure of our senior members who are vital to ensuring the delivery of safe and efficient gas services to the citizens of Philadelphia. PGW has unmatched expertise in the management and maintenance of LNG facilities, and a large part of the expertise comes from Local 686 union members. It is critical that these jobs are preserved, as many of our experienced members as possible remain at PGW. Whether it's $4 million annually or somewhat less, nobody doubts that this revenue helps secure union jobs going forward. And in turn, those union employees will ensure that PGW's plant continues to operate safely and to benefit Philadelphia. In this way alone, the approval of this project is very significant. The second question, does the project compromise the health and safety of PGW workers at the plant or Philadelphians at large? If Local 686 thought this project placed our members, their colleagues, their families, or neighborhoods at risk, we would not be here supporting it. That's of the foremost concern of the union. We are pleased to see that the efforts of PGW took with regards to independent evaluation of environmental concerns, and a review of the report satisfied us that this project will not compromise the health and safety of our members, the very people who are going to have more exposure than anybody else as they work in that plant. The study indicates that the air emissions impact of the new liquefier and loading facility is minimal, and its impact on water is negligible. In fact, we have always taken the position that increased use of natural gas rather than diesel and other home heating fuels has a positive effect on the environment. This project will expand the use of natural gas and reduce those of other fuels, so we support it for that reason also. If we believe that this project presented a health or a safety environmental problem, we would absolutely urge the rejection of this initiative. Third, what effect will this have on the ability of the city's ratepayers to pay for and to receive heat in the winter? This is an issue my members have always taken a progressive approach on, just as many of the members of council have, just as the consumer advocate has. Almost all the union's members are PGW customers. To them and to the hundreds of thousands of low-income ratepayers in Philadelphia, any delayed or reduction in future rate cases are very welcome. We believe that the revenue generated by this project should help achieve this goal. Our members spend a lot of their time working with customers living in poverty, trying to make sure that they're safely receiving gas and having necessary assistance to pay for it. We know that a new source of revenue, especially a responsible, practical one like this, can make a big difference for them. It is also important to point out that before our members got the pay and benefits that PGW provides and that the union negotiated, they themselves were living in impoverished Philadelphia neighborhoods. This project and the ongoing financial strength of PGW supports vital family-sustaining jobs. Beyond the construction phase, this project helps give PGW employees at Passyunk Plant the kind of continued job security that is in short supply today. This is an issue that hits close to home for all of us. So, for all these reasons, the significant infusion of cash that will help fund future labor agreements and that will encourage skilled laborers and employees to remain at PGW, the validated assurances that the health and safety of our workforce will not be compromised, and the benefit to PGW's low-income customers. We urge the committees to support the LNG project and to promptly move it forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Will the clerk please call the next panel?
Rob Ballinger, Christina Simeone, and Flora Cardoni.
Please state your name for the record and begin.
Good afternoon, Robert Ballinger from Community Legal Services.
Christina Simeone, Director of Policy and External Affairs for the Kleinman Center for Energy Policy at the University of Pennsylvania.
Flora Cardoni, the Climate Defender Campaign Director with Penn Environment.
Please begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson Johnson. members of the Transportation and Public Utilities Committee, and of course, Councilperson Green. My name is Robert Ballinger. I'm an attorney in the Energy Unit at Community Legal Services. I provided written testimony in advance and will be brief in summarizing the main points. You're welcome. I serve as public advocate in matters before the Philadelphia Gas Commission. I also represent low-income clients and groups to ensure that low-income utility customers in Philadelphia can maintain and restore essential utility service. I'm offering my testimony today based on both of those perspectives. As public advocate, I retained an expert consultant and presented some significant concerns with PGW's LNG expansion project. My consultant testified that it is not possible to evaluate the degree to which PGW and its ratepayers would be insulated from or compensated for risks without seeing the text of the final agreements among the parties to effectuate this project. I also maintain that the Gas Commission is legally required by the PFMC Management Agreement Ordinance to review the actual contracts and not just term sheets. So as to specific risks, I will just highlight a couple. If PGW's private partner, the Passyunk Energy Center, is not able to make this business work, the term sheet authorizes PGW to exercise broad step-in rights, to take over the enterprise or find a new business partner. PGW would not have to return to the Commission or to City Council before assuming significant new debt or potentially transitioning to a different business model. Also, the term sheets authorize PGW to change the fundamental bottom line economic provision, the guaranteed minimum annual payment of $1.35 million per year, there again, without seeking approval from the Gas Commission or City Council. Other provisions of the term sheets are vague and reflect that the parties still need to negotiate to determine exactly how risk will be allocated among them. Those are fundamental terms that will ultimately make clear whether this project should pass a basic risk versus reward analysis. But those terms have not yet been set nor submitted for public review. If this project ultimately goes forward, I believe it presents an opportunity for PGW and the city to deliver direct and ascertainable benefits to PGW customers who struggle to afford gas service. Specifically, I believe that if PGW is going to receive additional revenues by selling more gas through its new plant, it should dedicate a substantial amount of those revenues to programs that help low-income customers reduce their gas usage. PGW has tried to cut back on those programs. And how much low-income weatherization work it does, and to reduce the funding that it receives to conduct those programs. We've worked with other advocates to protect the existing funding, but it is not enough. At the rate PGW is going, it will take 25 years to help weatherize the homes of the more than 80,000 PGW customers who need this assistance in weatherizing their homes now. I propose that 50% or more of the additional revenues be earmarked to provide additional weatherization and energy efficiency repairs to low-income customers. Finally, as you know, the city receives an annual payment of $18 million from PGW's customers. That is funded by the rates its customers pay for gas service. Some or all of that money could be invested in meeting the city's goals for healthy housing and reducing energy waste for low-income Philadelphians. That investment would reduce the likelihood of unaffordable energy bills and promote the city's efficiency and environmental goals. While I recognize there is a pending resolution to hold hearings on the sustainability of PGW, and I look forward to the opportunity to participate in that process, Council should not delay in making a commitment of additional resources to help low-income customers and to help improve efficiency and environmental outcomes for all neighborhoods in Philadelphia. Thank you for your consideration of my testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Please state your name and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Christina Simeone. I'm the Director of Policy and External Affairs for the Councilman Center for Energy Policy at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you, Committee Chair Johnson and the rest of the council members for inviting me here to speak today. I'm here not to support or oppose the project, rather to provide information. In 2016, I authored a report looking at the benefits and risks of the project, but today, or the proposed project ideas, today I'm going to contextualize the PGW LNG opportunity at the Passyunk plant, describe the Passyunk Energy Center business model and associated risk, and provide 3 recommendations for your consideration. The most significant value proposition for LNG exists at the massive Richmond LNG plant, a little north of the city, with a profit potential estimated to be between $7 and $10 million. The notion of investigating LNG-related revenue generation options has been discussed as early as 2008 because the resources or the assets are generally underutilized as PGW's peak needs have dropped. Again, the focus has been on Richmond. In contrast, the Passyunk plant is about a 16th of the capacity of Richmond. Much smaller project, much smaller scale, much smaller profit potential, so that needs to be understood right off the bat. The profit potential, again, a minimum of around $1.35 million. Moving on to the business model, 1/3 of the Passyunk Energy Center's volumes on an annual basis will be vaporized and sold probably on a peak shaving basis through the pipeline. The rest, the 2/3 of the volume, is going to be delivered as LNG through truck. I suspect in the short to medium term, the majority of revenues and profits generated by this project are going to come from that 1/3 volume sold as peak shaving. That will probably, those profits will probably be generated over a very short period of time, maybe like a December, January. This is when basically the price spikes at the regional hubs, the TETCO M3 and the Transco Z6 hubs get very high because these hubs feed into the Northeast, which is generally supply and pipeline constrained. It's possible that the profits on this project could occur in a very short period of time, weeks or months in these winter months. There are several key risks to be aware of with this business model. One, PEC's ability to capitalize on this brief annual opportunity is going to be limited by the relatively small size of the Passyunk plant, or the tank. PGW's reliability call option on LNG volumes stored at PEC may inhibit PEC's ability to capitalize on these short-lived high prices. Over the 25-year term of the PGW PEC deal, it's possible that circumstances will change, in effect reducing the TETCO M3 and Transco Z6 non-New York hub winter price spikes that may initially make this project profitable. For example, if a pipeline is built to the Northeast or gas demand is generally reduced. Markets for the remaining 2/3 of PEC's annual product volumes are speculative, may take longer to mature, and may not be as profitable. So issues to explore further. One, safety. A 2015 feasibility study commissioned by PGW expressed some safety and permitting concerns with a much larger liquefier that was envisioned and some truck loading upgrades that were envisioned for the as part of the feasibility study. These concerns may no longer exist because the liquefier is much smaller, but public assurance that these site-specific issues have been addressed, as well as plans to coordinate scheduling of LNG truck deliveries with local emergency responders would be beneficial and is recommended. Crediting firm transportation. As discussed above, the key to PEC's profitability will be pipeline delivery of natural gas. During peak times, both gas supply and pipeline capacity to deliver gas can be limited. Capitalizing on peak shaving opportunities depends on PEC's use of both PGW's LNG facilities and PGW's firm interstate pipeline capacity, which is currently envisioned through exchange services. However, the petition term sheet does not seem to charge PEC for use of PGW's firm interstate transportation capacity. Rather, only intra-system transport is priced. I'd recommend further exploration of this issue to ensure PGW customers are credited for PEC's use of PGW's firm capacity. On environmental impacts, I agree that the study by Langdon shows that operations of the facility, the environmental impact of that will be minimal. However, the broader environmental impacts are going to be determined by the end use of the gas. Peak shaving end uses for that 1/3 of the project volumes will deliver modest to little environmental benefit because it's just gas-to-gas swapping. Maybe you can avoid the use of oil on a few days of the year. Reducing harmful diesel and fuel oil emissions through increased use of natural gas or LNG that's off the pipeline system, for example, could provide environmental and health benefits. Liberty has mentioned 3 key diesel displacement opportunities. It tends to pursue oil-fired generation, emergency generation, and heavy transport. But these markets may take considerable time to develop, and therefore the environmental benefits are theoretical until realized. So I would categorize this project, I've heard it being talked about as like the gateways to environmental hell, or so I like to say like unicorns and Pegasus that are going to like clean our environment. I don't think it's either one. But it's, again, speculative until you understand who the end client is. So to talk about some of those markets, the LNG for locomotive transport is still essentially in pilot phase. Displacing diesel through LNG for backup generation requires potentially prohibitive upfront investment. So if you currently have a diesel backup generator and you want to start using gas, you have to buy a totally different spark-ignited generator. You then have to invest in on-site tank, LNG tank, and vaporization capabilities. That may be cost prohibitive. Accelerating the retirement of rarely used oil-fired peak generation capacity could occur, provided a gas-fired unit invests in on-site LNG storage and vaporization assets, but it's unclear that these projects, usually only used for peak purposes, will be financially viable given the capital requirements and historic dispatch rates. My recommendation is to clear up some of these issues and uncertainties about environmental impact would be to host and disclose the outcomes of a non-binding open season for PEC services to better assess likely clients and inform claims about environmental benefits or harms. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee, and I look forward to any questions you may have.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Flora Cardoni, and I am the Climate Defender Campaign Director with Penn Environment, based in Philadelphia. Penn Environment, for those who might be unfamiliar, is a statewide people-powered environmental advocacy organization. Thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. I am here today to ask, or rather plead the council to reject PGW's proposal to put a liquefied natural gas plant in South Philadelphia. And before I begin my testimony and really getting into the reasons why, I do want to note how clearly non-democratic this hearing today has been, with the council allowing industry insiders to dominate panel after panel, while refusing to put many of my environmental and public health colleagues who are here in this room and signed up to testify before on a panel at all. I think this is creating I think this is creating a severely unbalanced view of support and opposition to this project, and I believe that would not hold if community members were actually welcome to express their opposition here today. That being said, I'm happy that I was given the opportunity to speak, and I hope I can represent my friends here in the room as I do so. I felt compelled to make my voice heard today because every day, and this is not an exaggeration, I wish it was, I wake up and think about climate change. Every single day, all day long. It is an omnipresent fear in the back of my mind. It's a fear of what the earth will look like in my own lifetime when I'm older. It's a fear of what we're leaving to future generations of Pennsylvanians. A fear of, again, within my lifetime, massive crop failures, encroaching seas, intense droughts, extreme heat, smog your air, increased diseases, and a fear that despite having the resources, technology, policies, and widespread public support to transition to a renewable energy future and help stop the worst impacts of climate change before they affect our communities more than they already are, we will continue to entrench ourselves in fossil fuel and mutually ensure our destruction. And I'm not alone in those fears. Of course, I'm here today on behalf of more than 150,000 Penn Environment members and volunteers and activists across the state who are concerned about climate change, as well as many in the room today. And I believe that this proposed gas plant is a striking example of these fears coming to life. Unlike some of the testifiers who spoke before me today, as unlike what they have stated, natural gas is not renewable and it is not clean. It is considered a fossil fuel that releases methane into the air. And in fact, PGW estimates that the new plant would churn out an additional 120,000 gallons of dirty fossil fuels every day for the next 25 years. This means instead of investing in clean renewable energy sources, as in line with Philadelphia's own commitment to reaching 100% renewable energy by 2035, we are committing to a dirty fossil fuel project for 25 more years, at least. 25 more years of fracking wells polluting our air and water in central Pennsylvania and making people sick. 25 more years of dangerous pipelines passing by schools and playgrounds and homes, one miscalculation away from exploding. And 25 more years of dangerous air pollution in an already polluted South Philadelphia, triggering more asthma attacks and respiratory ailments for residents already suffering from undue pollution and an unequal burden. And I believe that if this was actually about helping the low-income folks of Philadelphia, as some have stated, then we would be thinking more about the health impacts of this plant and about the impacts of climate change on those communities, which are very real and will only get worse if this project's allowed to continue. Per the National Climate Assessment and IPCC report that both came out in the fall of last year, internationally, scientists agree that we must transition to 100% renewable energy with net zero emissions by 2050 in order to stop the worst impacts of climate change here in Pennsylvania and around the world. And to do that, we must get off fossil fuels and stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure now. And that has to include any so-called natural gas plants or pipelines, because methane is a more potent greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide is. And if we lock into this project, that means that we are locking into 25 more years of fossil fuels at a time when we should be starting to make this renewable energy transition. I believe that we owe it to our children, to our grandchildren, to everyone in this room right now, and to the planet as a whole, the future of humanity, to address climate change with urgent and focused priority. Promoting increased reliance on fossil fuel consumption will only exacerbate this problem and do nothing to tackle it. So I urge City Council to oppose this plan and instead focus investments into renewable energy technology to ensure that future generations of Pennsylvanians actually have a safe and livable place to call home. Thank you.
Any questions from members of the committee? I just want to thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
So now we are going into the public comment section, and I would like to just note for the record, please provide your comments. We are using a timer on this particular process for the significant long list of individuals, but the clerk is going to read your name. Please come to the microphone, state your comments, and then we will be moving forward on action on this piece of legislation.
Lisa Hastings, Ann Dixon, and Sherry Cohen.
Ann Dixon has left. She has other appointments for the day.
All right. Nelson Pavlovsky. And Lynn Robinson.
And this will be limited to 3 minutes, please. Please state your name and you can begin.
Yes. My name is Lisa Hastings, and I'm here as a resident who's concerned about both the economic and environmental viability of the city. And I'm asking you to please disapprove this agreement. As you heard earlier from the public advocate, there's still questions about whether this agreement would even basically do what it said. It's not a done deal. PGW gave an incredible presentation of how this is going to be some quick and easy way to get money without investing funds. But in December, both the public advocate and the city controller questioned whether the city would even really be getting money from this deal. It was that vague and really somewhat shaky and sleazy. So please, regardless of what you feel, it's maybe not a good deal. The There's a lot of talk here about the environmental upsides of natural gas. I won't get into all that. But particularly from this little plant, there is no environmental upside to the residents of Philadelphia who live there by converting LNG for commercial use. It's going to be sold regional. It was in the original proposal. It's going to be sold outside the city. So the city is going to accrue the pollution, even a minimal amount, and the LNG is going to go somewhere else. In the original proposal, I thought it struck me that Liberty Energy, in writing this up, made a big, huge deal about distancing themselves from any relationship with the city or PGW. In fact, our quote-unquote private part of our partner said that they, quote, are not and will not claim to be a partner or joint venturer with PGW or the city. So if the city isn't their partner, what are we to them? I think they see Philadelphia as a target for for-profit fossil fuel expansion, and I ask you to not let Philadelphia take this role. Finally, I'm very concerned that even if this deal gave PGW money and didn't harm the environment, it would still hurt the city, because it would be good evidence that the city is still clinging to fossil fuel, that we're still dependent, and we still believe the myth that somehow natural gas isn't a fossil fuel. It totally undercuts the idea that Philadelphia is fully embracing a fossil fuel-free, renewable future. It's a very ruining our reputation nationally is a big price to pay for maybe getting a little bit of money from a fossil fuel plant that doesn't do the citizens any good. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Next, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Johnson and members of the City Council Committee on Transportation and Public Utilities. My name is Nelson Pavlovsky. I'm a citizen in Councilman Johnson's district, and I also volunteer with some environmental organizations, including Sunrise Movement. I just want to start by saying that climate change delayers are just as bad as climate change deniers in our current situation. There was a time for incrementally better fossil fuel projects like natural gas versus coal, and that time was 30 years ago. It is now too late for incrementalism. We have to make the jump to fossil-free energy right now. It's a bit of a cliche that it's very difficult to make someone understand something if their job depends on them not understanding it. And so it was very disappointing to me to see that, like, unions and workers supporting this natural gas plant because rationally they want jobs, they want money for their families, whatever. And that is why we need a Green New Deal and guaranteed green jobs in the city. We need Philadelphia to support a national Green New Deal and do everything they can to implement it locally to ensure green jobs and a livable future for all in Philadelphia. I also want to, some people here have indicated that there's revenue from this natural gas plant. Whether that's true or not, I disagree that that is a good thing, because I think that revenue from fossil fuels is bad because it gives the City of Philadelphia the incentive to continue using fossil fuels. So I think that is an actively bad thing. Fossil fuels will someday run out. The question is, will we stop using fossil fuels while there is still time to save the planet, or will we wait until we have burned literally everything that is the ground and we've already doomed our society? At that point, this transition away from fossil fuels will still happen, and we will still have to figure out what will happen to all of these workers, what will happen to all of these jobs. I say we do it, we figure it out now, that we show leadership and show the rest of the country how it can be done. And There is some reasonable concerns about what do you do when the sun is not shining or the wind is not blowing, but there are solutions that are not fossil fuels. I will just mention one particular technology. There's a company called Energy Vault, which lifts big blocks of concrete or something, I forget what it is, but they use the power of gravity to capture energy from solar panels and wind power. And so this is something that does not use fossil fuels. They just lift the blocks up and drop them back down when they want the energy back. And so that is one example of a technology that we could use instead of natural gas to store energy sustainably. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Robinson. I'm a union member, a residential customer, and director of Neighbors Against the Gas Plants, which has been focused on SEPTA's CHP, which does not reduce greenhouse gases, by the way. Thank you, Councilman Kenyatta Johnson and the entire City Council Committee on Transportation and Public Utilities for holding this public hearing. First of all, I want to volunteer to help PGW find individuals to form a task force to devise a better and responsible way to generate $1.3 million, because that's pretty much the minimum of what they're promising, and I doubt it's any more than that. But anyway, to generate $1.3 million a year in extra revenue. Put together a task force of people that know how to raise money and raise some money responsibly. Okay, I want to talk about the instinct to survive, which is stronger than empathy, because I'm not asking for empathy today. I'm asking you to address your own survival. I doubt that anyone in council chambers expects to be dead in 10 years, but the truth is that only billionaires have a good chance of surviving irreversible climate change, because they have options, like possibly living on another planet or living in a bubble on this one. Two things might happen within 10 years for you to survive. One, you become a billionaire, or two, the world, including Philadelphia, this year reverses course with our business models and eradicates the burning of fossil fuels, stops putting organic waste in landfills and incinerators, and vastly expands local, environmentally friendly food production. Even if we do it all correctly, and on the most recently recommended schedules by national and international climate reports, there is still no guarantee that it will be done soon enough. Sometimes we resist doing something we don't feel like doing, so we put it off. Right now, you think you have front burner issues, like the upcoming election, and this LNG plant seems like a bothersome detail. The consequences of letting this LNG slide out of this committee will affect survival for you and also me. City Council, Mayor Kenny, and the Office of Sustainability have not faced the science of natural gas. Confusion was artfully created by the gas industry marketing and messaging. Natural gas is not a transition fuel from diesel or oil or coal. In terms of climate change, natural gas usage results in tremendous methane leakage. The natural gas industry, from well sites to burning sites, and single-use plastic manufacturing sites, makes natural gas the most climate-warming fossil fuel. Will you ever accept the science? A new LNG plant in Philadelphia tells the state of Pennsylvania that because we do not believe the science of natural gas, we support fracking, the manufacture of single-use plastics, and the burning of gas as a fossil fuel. A new LNG plant tells Philadelphia residents not to be surprised by proposals of additional gas power plants in the city, and tells neighborhoods that gas will replace oil burners in local schools. A new LNG plant tells the world that this city is reluctant to move ahead to renewable alternatives because politicians are beholden to deep pockets. Political or financial support for your upcoming election campaign may seem more important to you at this time. I am asking you to fast forward to 5 years from now, then 10 years, and evaluate whether you can bite the bullet on this one and choose real life, real-time survival. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions from members of the panel? Can we please have the next
Matt
witnesses,
Walker,
please?
Minal Raval, and Alex Lola, and Mitch Chanin.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Matt Walker, and I'm the Advocacy Director with Clean Air Council. I'll skip our little blurb, but just mention that we have 37 activist members in many in the Philadelphia region. The Council is very concerned about PGW's proposal to build an LNG plant that would lock us into at least another 25 years of reliance on natural gas for residential and institutional heating, at a time when, according to the recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, we only have 11 years to cut greenhouse gas emissions 45% to avoid catastrophic climate change, which includes methane reductions as well. The environmental analysis performed by Langdon was one-sided, as it only assessed potential indirect benefits of the project while completely disregarding the indirect negative environmental impacts, including climate change impacts that would result from the project. Without all the data, PGW, Langdon, and the Philadelphia Gas Commission examiners all stated that this project will provide a net environmental benefit because the gas will displace diesel fuel. However, the three opportunities PGW referenced, oil-fired generation, emergency generation, and heavy transportation, are speculative and would only yield air quality benefits if those markets were to develop in the future and the projects are actually implemented. The markets for these opportunities would likely take substantial time to develop, which means these potential benefits are not a definite outcome by any means. It is disingenuous for Liberty Energy Trust and Langdon to use theoretical diesel exhaust reductions in the region as a justification for the project. If the city is serious about reducing diesel exhaust from some sources in the city, it should consider policies that specifically target pollution sources in the city that use diesel fuel. What's more, there could be a much deeper reduction in all types of air pollution if those sources now burning diesel were instead to switch to cleaner, renewable energy. Given that the indirect negative environmental impacts have not been analyzed, City Council does not have all the information they need to make a well-informed decision. The Council urges City Council to request the following: additional hazardous air pollutants and volatile organic compounds that would be emitted at the site of the plant, which is not in the environmental assessment currently. Additional air pollution in the regions where the gas originates, is processed, compressed, and transported. Climate impacts from leaks of methane, a potent greenhouse gas, from additional equipment and potential additional throughput at the plant, including storage tanks, truck loading system, and increased leaks from the vaporizer. Climate change impacts from the significant amount of methane leaks that occur throughout the natural gas production process used to supply this plant. Additional electricity needed from the regional grid. LNG is an energy-intensive process, and also the associated environmental impacts from various power sources. Justification of the project by conducting a full alternatives analysis of non-fossil fuel alternatives to achieve similar goals. I'll just finish up in just a few seconds here. PGW's proposal for an LNG facility is completely inconsistent with the city's clean energy vision, which commits to drastically reduce greenhouse gases and transition quickly to renewable energy. To fulfill this vision, PGW needs to rapidly switch to using renewable natural gas and explore additional ways to incorporate different types of renewable energy into its future business plan. PGW should work with the city and relevant stakeholders to develop a plan that transitions them away from fossil fuels completely. This planning must happen before any decision about this proposal takes place. For all the project's drawbacks, there surely are other ways to achieve the same economic goals with decisions about new programs or changes in programs that are more aligned with the city's vision. The Council urges City Council and this committee to require PGW to explain exactly how the revenues will be used and how low-income customers would benefit, for example, weatherization opportunities. The amount of time, energy, and public resources we're using right now to discuss this program could be much better spent on figuring out how the city could further deploy renewable energy and energy efficiency. Okay. We strongly urge this committee to delay any decision on this facility until after City Council and other stakeholders have fully evaluated the long-term business plan for PGW. Thank you.
Thank you. Just please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Meenal Raval, a resident of Mount Airy, Philadelphia. I'm a grassroots climate activist. It means I don't get paid to be here from 9 this morning till almost 3. Most of the other speakers here have been getting compensated for their time here. Just wanted to make that clear. I'm doing this because it's important. I am also disappointed that our current administration does not see our perspective and that the city suggests that you go ahead with this. I'll remind you of the difference between the legislative and the executive branch. It's your job to counter what they say and listen to the public. I've also been trained on the climate reality with Vice President Al Gore, so I've studied a bit of the science too. On October 16th, I spoke at a Gas Commission meeting stating simply that the recent IPCC report asks us to reduce our emissions as soon as possible. PGW's product, whether you call it natural gas or fracked gas or methane, emits about 25% of our city's emissions. How do we get these emissions to zero, I asked. And how do we do this without laying off anyone and still continue to heat our homes? We need a different business model for PGW. Since then, we met with Councilmember Derek Green, also chair of the Gas Commission. And at that meeting, we left that meeting believing that he too wanted a different business model for PGW, one that didn't involve selling more and more gas. Our understanding was that we'd have a public hearing about the future of PGW before we fast-tracked another fossil fuel project. Somehow, this came first. Seeing PGW's marketing budget spent on ads promoting this project on bus shelters and train stations, we wonder, wouldn't it be better to this money spent educating us about energy efficiency measures instead? Meanwhile, at the December Gas Commission hearing, they blatantly ignored our public opposition when they voted to okay this project. And I'll clarify Ms. McClendon's testimony. They do not publish their transcripts on their website. It is not possible for the public to know what the Gas Commission does. Why aren't we working this hard to fast-track new clean energy projects? We take pride that PGW is the nation's largest municipally owned utility, yet there appears to be no way that citizens can participate in the steering of this utility that we own, I own. Even when signing up to testify for this hearing, the chair of the committee deferred all coordination of the hearing to the champion of this project. People signing up to speak of their opposition were being advised, that the speakers representing fossil fuel industries had no time limit, while allowing only 3 minutes for us, there we go, right on time, and also allowing only one voice from each group. In the interest of time, I have been here since 9 this morning. I will sit here till I finish what I have to say. If our goal is public health and a livable planet, we're headed in the wrong direction by further developing our reliance on gas. I suggest you all read Charles Ellison's article in the, what is it? No, the Philadelphia Citizen, thank you. It was just published yesterday called Reality Check, Voting Green, or another way to put it, Vote Green or Die. He asks, why aren't our elected officials talking more and more about climate change and pollution? This election, the voters we demanded. I say we're demanding it today. We ask that council passes on gas. I stepped up to testify today via email as soon as I heard of this hearing, and yet today I had to be at the end because I got to scribble it in. Why wasn't I on the speaker list? I think this is on purpose. I feel it's on purpose. I'm going to be in the back gathering petitions for candidates that want to act on climate. I'll name them: Helen Gim, Sherry Cohen, Justice DeBaradinius. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record and begin.
My name is Alex Lola, and I live less than a mile from where this proposed project will be built in Councilman Mark Squilla's district. So, if you could maybe pay attention instead of looking at the phone, that'd be cool. But I do really appreciate you guys taking the time to hear me out today. I think I speak for everyone in this room when I say that I am proud to be a resident of Philadelphia. I haven't lived here long, but it's easy to tell why people here love it so much. We have centuries worth of history, vibrant arts and culture, great hoagies. I mean, come on. But what has made me most proud of Philadelphia since the day I stepped foot in this city is that we are a leader. We, from hosting the first Continental Congress in 1774 to being the first East Coast city to adopt the new Climate Change Adaptive Building Code in 2018, Philly has shown time and time again that it doesn't want to follow when it comes to progress. It wants to lead. As the most progressive city in the Commonwealth, rifled with dirty fossil fuel production, it's on us to lead the way when it comes to fighting for a healthy and livable climate for all Pennsylvanians. Yet this proposed LNG plant will only work to reverse the progress that we've made as a city and state towards a healthier planet. Natural gas, in spite of any messaging to the contrary, is a dirty fuel source that pollutes our air with methane, a greenhouse gas almost 30 times as potent as carbon dioxide. The extraction and transportation of natural gas are processes that have harmed the health and well-being of thousands of Pennsylvanians near and far. Pipelines explosions have destroyed people's homes. Fracking fluids poison the drinking water of dozens of communities. Methane leaks have harmed air quality and increased our statewide greenhouse gas emissions. The list goes on. How can Philadelphia continue in its role as a statewide and national leader if it plans to increase and capitalize on projects and practices that directly harm the health of fellow Pennsylvanians? Not to mention the consequences it'll have on the Southwest Philly community and predominantly in low-income and minority community and the rest of the city. I gotta tell you that profiting at the expense of our residents and countless more across the state is not a good look for us, and we can do better. I can stand here and spend hours, and believe me, I have, talking to you all about why this project is a foolish idea from a social justice perspective, a public health perspective, environmental, financial, consumer, you name it. But beyond all of those things, it'll be a stain on the record of City Council, whose job it is to protect its residents and lead Philly and the Commonwealth towards progress and away from harm. In the wake of the many reports we've seen outlining the quickly approaching and honestly terrifying potential consequences of climate change, we are at a pinnacle point in history where we must pick a side. Bettering the bottom line of polluters or truly fighting for a livable climate because we don't have a planet B. So Chairman Johnson, Vice Chairman Squilla, Councilmember Parker, Councilmember O, I must ask you, which side of history will you be on? Will Wikipedia show you as a climate and health champion who refused more fossil fuel infrastructure, or will someone who neglected the clear science and chose to support dirty energy at a time when we knew full well that we needed to rapidly decarbonize? Please vote no on this proposed fossil fuel project. We can do better. And I'd like to add that City Council is also obligated to hear and respect the voices of the public. This project has not done that, and this hearing has not done that. A member of Councilmember Green's staff neglected to include myself and many others opposed to this project in panels today, despite our registration to do so in the allotted time frame. Let that sink in. The person who introduced this bill's staff silenced us. Person is not on the committee and neglected to include us in the panel, which is why I'm continuing to speak now. We were told not to come. This is insane. This is an obstruction of democracy. Thank you.
Very passionate. So I just want to do this because you two have already spoken. Anyone else speaking? Can you please come on up, ma'am?
It's my turn. Ma'am, if you finish speaking, you gotta step out. Okay. Great. Thanks for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Mitch Chen, and I'm on the steering committee of 350 Philadelphia. I'm also a member of Power's climate justice team. I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted by the speaking behind me. Like all the other speakers in the last 20 minutes or so, I am strongly opposed to the approval of this liquefied natural gas project in South Philadelphia and would ask you all to vote no on the resolution. I want to lift up one particular argument that I think hasn't really been focused on yet, and that's building upon something that Christina Simeone from the Kleinman Center put forward as part of her report. Before I do that, though, I want to say how frustrating it is to have to be challenging the views of folks in the labor movement since I grew up in a union family. There's a growing call around the country for a Green New Deal, which would involve a massive federally funded and coordinated program to transition the United States within a period of just a little more than 10 years from fossil fuels to renewable energy while creating good living wage unionized jobs. I would really like to see City Council hold hearings about the call for a Green New Deal and express their support for a Green New Deal to our members of Congress. Congressman Boyle is already on board. Congressman Evans and Mary Gay Scanlon are not yet on board. Neither is Senator Casey, and certainly not Senator Toomey. It would mean a lot if members of council would engage in local planning for the implementation of a Green New Deal, inviting labor, community-based organizations, and environmental groups to that table, and notify members of Congress of your support. I want to focus now on the LNG project narrowly. I agree that there's a real problem with energy insecurity and fuel poverty in Philadelphia. Many Philadelphians struggle to afford to pay their utility bills or literally get cut off by PGW because they can't pay. This is a huge problem and needs a real solution. This LNG project is not a solution to that problem. In addition to the fact that it would only provide a very small amount of revenue, which would be spread across all of PGW's customers, counting on any revenue at all from this project means betting against effective climate policy. Noted climate researcher Kevin Anderson in the UK has noted that countries in Europe and the United States will need to all but phase out fossil fuels, including natural gas, entirely by 2035 for the United States, for the world to have even a 2/3 chance of staying within the 2-degree global warming limit that we've committed to. 2035. I'm sorry, I'm going to take one more minute. If effective policies are implemented to even come close to that goal, markets for natural gas will vanish during that time frame. Christina Simeone raised a really interesting bit of financial analysis, noting that most of the expected profits from the LNG project would come from selling gas during times of peak demand and short supply to New England during the winter time. I don't think it's been acknowledged or considered yet that policies are already implemented to reduce demand for LNG in those states during that time frame. The state of Massachusetts has just implemented a new so-called clean peak standard to incentivize the use of renewable energy during those peak periods. They've also authorized bond issues to provide billions of dollars in energy efficiency retrofitting, renewable energy development, demand management, and they are also requiring the construction of hundreds of megawatts of offshore wind turbines. All of those projects will reduce demand for gas in the market that this project is expected to sell to and that are expected to provide most of the profits that would benefit ratepayers in the city of Philadelphia. There will be more of those initiatives in the coming years if we're even remotely serious about the climate crisis. So counting on revenue from this project to solve the problem of fuel poverty is not a good idea. We need real solutions to fuel poverty, like the ones that Chris from the Community Legal Services put forward, and more. I would really like to see a hearing about real solutions to fuel poverty in Philadelphia and about a Green New Deal for transitioning off of fossil fuels. And I think it's critically important to examine the business case for this project in light of policies that are already being implemented to reduce demand for natural gas during the times that this project is expected to produce profits. If you do not conduct that analysis, you cannot vote on this in a responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
My name is Audra Wolf. I'm a Philadelphia resident, and I'm here today representing Power. I'm also a member of Power's Climate Justice team. I'll be delivering comments that were prepared by Rabbi Julie Greenberg and Terry Bergen and were circulated to in advance. For the record, Power was also expecting to have been on one of the panels earlier, so I'm representing their comments now instead. As many of you know, Power is a multiracial, multi-faith community organization with a strong focus on racial, economic, and climate justice. We are alarmed by the juncture of extreme inequality and climate crisis in our city, and we stand with leaders who are heeding the great moral call of these times to move rapidly towards a renewable energy economy that works for all. We oppose new fossil fuel infrastructure. We oppose the fossil fuel LNG plant. This proposed plant, which serves only the goal of extracting profit rather than caring for the viability of people's lives on a sustainable planet, would not be a step towards a green economy future. Instead, it would be a step backward into a dirty energy past. Power organizes deeply in low-income Black and brown neighborhoods in Philadelphia. We are deeply aware of energy insecurity and energy poverty. Energy affordability is a huge concern, but the proposed LNG plant is a false solution to that problem. It would generate only, we've heard numbers from 1.35 million to 4 million per year. Even the largest of that number is only 0.6% of PGW's annual revenue of $636 million in 2017. That would lead to only a very small reduction in Philadelphians' energy bills. But more to the point, that revenue would be spread out among all PGW customers. It would not be targeted to benefit low-income people in particular. We're not stupid. We can't be fooled into accepting a few pennies in exchange for increasing climate instability that causes extreme weather, exacerbates housing, food, and employment insecurity, and targets those who have the least with the biggest burdens. In Philadelphia, we need a comprehensive plan for a rapid and just transition to renewable heat. Such a plan would ensure that everyone's home is comfortable, safe, and healthy, that people can afford the energy they need, and that we can heat our buildings without contributing to climate change. That plan will likely require large-scale energy efficiency retrofits. As others have suggested this afternoon, City Council should join the call for a nationwide Green New Deal, which could provide the infrastructure and investment, the investment in infrastructure that's needed. As Mitch Channon also did before me, we raised the question, does proceeding with this project mean that PGW, the City of Philadelphia, and Liberty Energy Trust are betting against effective climate policy? A number of states and cities, including Massachusetts, have now eliminated fossil fuels from their energy portfolios. I'll continue for just a minute. The market for liquid and natural gas is going to change dramatically as more states and cities implement such policies limiting their access to fossil fuels. What happens if the LNG plant cannot establish enough revenue for Liberty to keep operating it? Will the city assume Liberty's debt for this project? If we take effective action across the country to limit global warming, with equity features integrated from the ground up, our energy economy will change in several ways. Jobs will shift to solar array and wind projects, replacing jobs related to gas-fired plants. Jobs will burgeon in buildings that require energy efficiency retrofits. Jobs in demand response program will reduce the demand for gas at peak times, reducing the needs for gas storage. Please reject the false idea that more fossil fuel infrastructure is a solution to energy poverty and global warming. Let's free our creative resources to finding real solutions for an economy that protects people and the planet. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next. State your name, sir, for the record.
Yes, my name is Mark Clancy. I am a resident of South Philadelphia and a member of Philly Thrive. Philly Thrive is an organization that's been around for 3 years, and we have been fighting the Philadelphia Energy Solutions Refinery for that long, organizing on the fence line of our neighborhood. I live very close to PES and to the proposed LNG site. This refinery that I'm talking about emits toxic chemicals. The pollution from this refinery causes cancer, asthma, and other respiratory illnesses. Philly Thrive, a couple of years ago, took a survey in the neighborhood of South Philly. This survey showed that 33.7% of our residents in South Philadelphia have asthma. I'm speaking for the voice of South Philadelphia, as well as all of Philadelphia, in saying one fossil fuel company in this neighborhood is more than enough. We don't want any more. Even if it is a little bit of little more pollution, it's too much. And I thank City Council for allowing me a chance to speak, and I'm going to turn it over to you, James.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, council members. Thank you for your service to our city and for listening to what we have to say today. I'm James. I'm a resident of Roxborough, and I'm just going to briefly cover, I guess, some of the highlights. You have my written testimony, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm a key point person, a numbers person, and I will go ahead and hit some of the important numbers that I listed in my testimony. Mr. Mark mentioned that our survey showed that 33.7% of residents in South Philly have asthma. There's another important number that I'd like to share from a little bit of research that I've been doing. That number is 40%. 40%. That's, I guess, about half, almost half of our children in South Philadelphia have asthma. This is according to research.
I'm not debating the facts, but is there like documentation to say, as a result of this particular PGW facility, there's a direct impact on individuals who have asthma in South Philadelphia? If you could help provide that for the committee, that'd just be good information.
I think it's recognized, yes, that there's
not recognized, but like specific Pew Charitable Trust or EPA. Just if you could have that information and provide that to the chairperson of the gas committee, that'd just be helpful as he does his hearing moving forward in the future. It could be part of the robust conversation around.
Sure, absolutely, yes.
Health.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Thank you, sir.
And if I can just make a couple more points here. Along with the Philadelphia refinery that we've talked about, this neighborhood also includes Interstate 95, 76, the Philadelphia airport. All of this, prevailing winds blow pollution from these facilities directly towards this neighborhood. There are studies that can show that as well. So, we don't believe that it's necessarily a coincidence that all of these things are there and these asthma rates are so high. It's also a little concerning that there seems to be an issue of public safety. We've heard from Christina Simeone today about the issue of public safety there. And I guess to close, just in terms of the numbers, I didn't really plan to talk about finances. There was, I think, the number $1.3 million to $4 million thrown out there. If I recall correctly, a year ago, the amount that the U.S. spent on natural disasters was something on the order of $306 billion. Studies have shown that the hurricanes and flooding are only going to get worse from that. And I've also heard from our residents and our members here in Philly Thrive that flooding is occurring in their houses more frequently in our city, in our own city as well. With that, I'll put it simply, I believe this is the wrong project at the wrong time. The facility where this plant is proposed to be built is in a neighborhood that is 70% people of color. It is more than 30% people who are below the federal poverty line. It is an environmental issue. It is a racial justice issue. And finally, information provided to these residents has been minimal, and yet they are getting sick and dying every day due to the pollution that already poisons our air. I implore you all to recognize that, vote against this project, and start talking about real long-term solutions today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please state your name for the record and begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Sylvia Bennett. I'm a resident in South Philadelphia for over 50 years. I've raised 5 children. I'm here to talk about that. My children are dying. I have 2 daughters with cancer. One just came down with the second cancer, blood cancer. I went to her doctor at the Perelman Center. We talked about where this cancer came from. Dozens of people are dying in my community. I've watched children grow up with my adult children and they're dying. I'm begging you. I'm not too proud to beg. When it affects your children, it hurts. It hurts deep down inside. Please, please help us live. We want to live. We don't care about the billionaires and the money. God gave us air, free air, to breathe and clear water to drink, not poison toxics for people to make millions off of. Help us in the community, please. I'm begging you.
Good afternoon, congresspersons and members. My name is Carol White. I'm also from Philly Thrive. I'm on the board. I've just been out in South Philadelphia for 15 years. I've been in this organization also for 3.5 years, and I'm only going to speak up for South Philadelphia residents. We're not saying exactly we're going to talk about PEW. We're going to talk about the refinery that lives right across the street from us in this biogas plant. There's 2 already across the street from us. Now we're trying to talk about a third one. This third one is going to make more impact on the children that I watch grow up in South Philadelphia, and also my seniors. My children and my seniors are more important to me than anything else, because we have a right to think about seniors that's been around so long to find themselves dying instantly. We talk about this, the high rise we have already with seniors and the air that goes right through their windows. We don't have no like central air inside of these projects. We have just regular open your windows and breathe. They don't have a right to breathe fresh air, and that's against the law. We talk about people that's drinking waters. Everybody's buying bottled waters now. We're scared to eat the food. We're scared to smell the air, and then we also scared to stay in South Philadelphia. This third plant will be the worst disaster ever for South Philadelphia residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Is there any other members going to testify on bill number 181063? Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
This will be our last 2.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Councilman Kenyatta and Johnson and committee and others. So I'm opposed to the LNG plant. My name is Claudia Crane. I am a 40-plus year resident of Philadelphia. I live in Fairmount. I'm going to truncate my remarks because I agree with the reasons given by the other opponents, but I want to bring in something that hasn't really been emphasized. Since this is also the Transportation Committee, I thought it appropriate to point out a vision for Philadelphia focusing on green transportation as an example of one of the facets of making Philadelphia more green and away from a fossil fuel future, including natural gas, liquefied or not. Our ground transportation system, public and private, should really move away rapidly from greenhouse gas producing fossil fuels toward an all-electric renewable future. And one thing that's really exciting that I learned from the Alternative Fuels Data Center, which is from the Energy Department, that you can get on their website really easily. It's a great website, it's got really interesting information, and Donald Trump I don't think knows about it, because if he did, he'd try to get rid of it. Anyway, that's the Alternative Fuels Data Center, check it out. AFDC, you can Google that. It turns out that an electric vehicle in Pennsylvania uses produces only 4.4 thousand pounds of CO2 per year. And that sounds like a lot, but you compare that That's half, less than half, of the 11.4 thousand pounds of CO2 that a gasoline-powered vehicle produces. So, and the reason for that is because it's all about the engine. It turns out that electric vehicle engines are much more efficient than internal combustion engines. So that information is on this AFDC Energy Department website. And SEPTA has long recognized the efficiency of electric power in its trolley system. Its regional rail is powered by diesel, but that diesel is converted to electricity to run the trains because that's more efficient than burning the diesel directly in an internal combustion engine. So if we think about just putting solar panels everywhere, putting them on rooftops, putting them in parking lots, putting turbines in the water in our fast-flowing Delaware and Schuylkill rivers to generate electricity. Let's go crazy with that. And there'd be so many jobs created by generating this electricity. Put charging stations everywhere in these parking lots. You know, we've got these huge parking lots in South Philadelphia. So let's go nuts with that, and not nuts with this stupid LNG thing, which will incrementally decrease ratepayers' rates, but might do that. And let's go for the jobs. Jobs are what's really important, the jobs that can be created by a solar future. And so let's stop fracking and LNG and get cracking on a renewables future. So that's pretty much it, all I wanted to say, except I have a question I've had a burning question for years every time I've been here. I want to know about these lights. Are these LED lights or are they incandescents? I'm looking at the burnt out ones. They look like incandescents to me. Does anybody know the answer to that question?
I don't think they're LED lights.
That's terrible. Can your committee or city council do something about that immediately? It's nuts to have incandescents.
Yeah, we can look into that.
You can look into that? Great. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to take the time of Ann Dixon and Sherry Cohen that couldn't speak. Okay, I'm going to Thank you.
We have to wrap up though, ma'am. I know you've been here since 9.
I've been here since 9, yes, sir.
Yes. So can you, if you don't mind, since it's your second time coming and I'm being, can you just be brief if you don't mind? We know you're very passionate.
It's not a speech, really. I just realized that nobody made a...
Can you make your statement?
Sure.
Thank you.
Name is Minal Ravel.
Say your name.
Minal Ravel.
Yes.
This morning, each of you got a packet, but I think the public and the TV stuff doesn't know about that you got this packet. The packet was about, we built an alliance called Pass On Gas Philly, and that's about 25 organizations, so they were not all here, but they all supported us. Also, the packet included a list of 18 ward leaders and committee persons that also support us. It also included 4 state reps that support us in opposition to what is being proposed. So I just wanted to summarize that there is much more support than for what I said than what you heard. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
And nobody mentioned that.
Thank you very much for your advocacy. The chair now recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on the bills.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate all the... Before we go into the public meeting, I'd just like to make one last comment for the record and appreciate the advocacy and the people who have supported a reduction of fossil fuels and the carbon footprint here in the city of Philadelphia and how important that is. And I work with my colleagues to create a hearing and maybe with Councilman Green come up with a hearing to discuss how the city will be moving forward on that initiative that is very important to us here in the city of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you. I do also will be looking forward to working with Councilman Mark Squilla, but also, most importantly, Councilman Derek Green. He's been an advocate on this issue, and so I know he's been very thoughtful in putting this legislation forward. There's no zero-sum games in this process. There's no either or. We try to compromise and come to some level of making sure that we're addressing people's concerns while also continuously to move the city of Philadelphia forward. And so I'm going to acknowledge Councilman Derek Green for his comments before we call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To follow up on my colleague, Councilmember Squilla's commentary, we will be having a hearing that we introduced, Resolution 181081, that discusses the future sustainability of PGW. I've been taking notes on all the comments that have been made today. Also talking with others. I invite various advocates, those who support and oppose this legislation, to reach out to me so we can continue the conversation. There was a statement made earlier that people were not allowed to testify. That was not my understanding. My understanding is that everyone had the opportunity to testify. As anyone that knows me in this body, I have a very open door policy, even with those who vehemently oppose my thoughts and suggestions, because I think you can always get communication, understanding when you engage in conversation. So we look forward to having the hearing on the future sustainability of PGW. Also, I know Councilmember Squilla and I have also discussed about possible amendments regarding some reporting requirements regarding this legislation, and so we'll also look at that as well. Based on that and based on the concerns that a number of people have raised, I would ask that the chair of this committee, if they do decide to vote this bill out of committee today, do it without a rule suspension to give us additional time to address other concerns and questions for this legislation.
Thank you, Councilman. And also, I just have an interest on the support financially for weatherization programs for low-income residents here in the city of Philadelphia. I think that would be great if we can take that to the next level in terms of the advocacy, the promotion, and then really encouraging people to weatherize their homes. Just wanted to say that for the record.
I'm already thinking on that as we speak.
Thank you. This concludes the public hearing on Resolution 181063. We will now transition into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on this bill. The chair now recognizes Councilman Mark Squilla for a motion on this bill we just heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the bill number 181063 be reported from this committee and from the call of the sponsor of the bill without a suspension of the rules to be further worked on for amendments. That motion is moved.
Second. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 181063 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation and with a request that the rules of council not be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and the motion carries. This bill will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, without a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council will not be suspended to permit first reading at the next council section. With a favorable recommendation. With a favorable recommendation. So let me clarify this. The ayes have it and the motion carries that this bill will be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation. However, a request that the rules of council not be suspended to permit first reading at the next session of council. This concludes this committee business for today. Thank you.